So maybe I'll ask you to do it again.
Sure.
With okay, we're live.
Sounds like my daughter ran into something. I'm just gonna.
Okay. Yeah. We'll give it another minute. More people signing in, I guess. You good?
As we speak, yes.
Okay.
But you can feel free to get started whenever.
Yeah. Okay. One more minute, then we'll start.
Sounds good.
1 minute. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I see a few more board members actually signing in. So
Oh. Okay. You good to go?
I am when you are. Yep.
Okay. All right. All right. So welcome all to Community Board 8 Social Justice Committee meeting. This is our second meeting, and I welcome you all and thank you all for coming. Also, I want to welcome a new co-chair, Sarah Chu, who is with us. And just once again, thank you for spending your Friday evening with us here. I'd like to pause and let Max give some instructions to those who are on the meeting, on this call.
Sure. So welcome to the second meeting, everyone. For those who are new here, you'll remain muted throughout tonight's conversation. There will be an opportunity for you to engage and speak. And when you do, you'll go to the reactions icon at the bottom of your screen and press raise your hand. From there, I can unmute you and you'll have to click to confirm. If you're on the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute.
Thank you, Max. So we will be going through the agenda one by one. And at the third point, that's when we'll have an open discussion. So we ask that we hold questions or comments until we get to the third part, which is of the agenda, which is an open discussion. So the first point on the agenda is the First Amendment. I just want to reiterate it, remind others of it. I'm pretty sure many are aware the First Amendment provides that Congress make no law respecting on establishment of religion or prohibiting its free exercise. It protects freedom of speech, the press, assembly, and the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So we see during, since the death of George Floyd, and even past that, people have been taken to the streets, protesting, and for other reasons. And we've also seen that this First Amendment has been at times violated by by law enforcement and so forth. But I just wanted to, just remind us all of the First Amendment. You can look it up yourself. Everyone has a right to assemble, to free speech. Of course, be careful of what you're saying. Yes, but we have these rights and they're protected, and we would hope that they would continue to be protected. And I'm going to let Sarah take the second point of the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, and so to set ourselves up for our conversation, we thought that we'd show a clip and of the events at the Capitol. And so this is a clip from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. So it's interesting in that it's an international organization broadcasting its perspective of what happened and what we wanted to take a look at. And after the clip, we'll open for discussion. To have kind of a visual representation of how law enforcement responded to the Black Lives Matters protests compared to how they responded in the Capitol. So Max, if you could play that for us.
Sure, absolutely. Let me share my screen. Hold on.
Thank you.
Okay, can everyone see it so far? Let me make it a little big. Can everyone?
We can see
Sarah,
it, Max.
You can? Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
We're not getting audio.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Is there supposed to be audio?
It has audio, maybe because the closed caption might be on. I'm not sure.
Max, if you stop sharing your screen and as you go to share your screen again, make sure to check the box at the bottom that says sharing video clip.
Let us give it a look. So when I go to share my screen, oh, share sound. There we go. Sorry about that.
There's an optimize for video option too. Max.
Click that one as well.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So both clicked.
Yep.
I will start from the beginning.
This image is coursing through social media feeds today. Black custodial staff at the Capitol cleaning up the mess of a white mob. Windows can be repaired, statues cleaned, the appearance of order restored, but there's no sweeping away this.
No video.
From moment
No
one,
video.
yesterday's ugliness had an added layer of
There's no, you don't see it. You hear, but you don't see. Is that right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's try again. Sorry about that. That
No,
is,
okay. Technology.
let's see. Okay. Can everyone see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Let's try now. Sorry about that.
This image is coursing through social media feeds today. Black custodial staff at the Capitol cleaning up the mess of a white mob. Windows can be repaired, statues cleaned, the appearance of order restored, but there's no sweeping away this. From moment one, yesterday's ugliness had an added layer of bile to it. White extremists rampaging and an anemic police response. At times, apparently a friendly one, posing for selfies with rioters, assisting some down the stairs, arresting very few. That says one thing to many watching on.
Here's another example of what we see as white privilege, that you are able to come and be a mob and go in and take over just about, for a little while anyway, the U.S. Capitol of the United States.
Melanie Campbell heads the Black Women's Roundtable, says she couldn't help thinking about her own experiences. That's her being arrested at the Capitol 2 years ago.
I've been active in civil rights all my adult life. The first thing that was like, what the hell? What is going on? This issue around policing and policing reform and issues around criminal justice and injustice. It's one of the number one reasons African Americans voted.
Anyone suggesting the police response was weak because the assault was unexpected hasn't paid attention. Multiple reports say extremists have been signaling their intentions online for weeks, what they would do, when and where, all the while talking of weapons. So no, the siege was not a surprise. The police response to it fits a pattern of giving white extremists a pass.
The FBI prioritizes the investigation of environmentalists and Black Lives Matter protesters that they call Black identity extremists, when it's very clear that the amount of violence these white supremacist far-right militant groups engage in is a far more serious problem.
Remember Michigan's State House last May? Armed and intimidated, allowed to protest.
White supremacy lives here, screaming to the top of your lungs, Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
And then the response to Black Lives Matter protests in D.C. not long after.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
Or almost anywhere in the U.S. The National Guard was deployed to protect the Lincoln Memorial during BLM protests in the spring. They were requested well in advance to protect the Capitol yesterday. The Department of Defense acknowledged delaying the deployment, and when they arrived, it was too late. Damage done, pattern repeated. White extremists simply assessed and treated differently from black protesters.
That shows why people were willing to walk through the Capitol and even engage in destructive behavior, vandalizing the Capitol, stealing things from the Capitol, without covering their faces. They weren't acting like burglars in the middle of the night, right? They weren't trying to hide from the cameras. Some of them were actually live streaming their activities.
And look back. 3 years ago, a black man praying in protest at the Capitol building was surrounded and arrested. It was Reverend Raphael Warnock of Georgia. He will be back in that chamber in 2 weeks as a sitting senator, someone police there will have to protect.
If you're trying to lose belly fat, stop doing cardio.
Was there additional that we should fast forward through that?
That was it. That was the end.
Okay,
Yes.
fantastic. Okay.
And Sandrea, you're still muted.
Oh, I can take care of that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I lost my internet, so I'm back on my phone. It happened during the film. So yeah, so that was a look at the disparities to show you the difference, how different groups are treated in these United States. There's so much more. You could even look into the kettling that was done on June 4th in the Mott Haven section of the Bronx, how law enforcement entrapped uh, peaceful protesters, as well as it was during the what was it, the curfew, and they arrested a lot of people, but they kettled them in. Kettling is when they um, make a square radius of, the people that's in the middle, and they just surround them and they block them in. It's supposed to be for crowd control, but this was more so as a form of intimidation, and a lot of people got arrested. Even people that were essential workers that were actually out there had permission to be out there during the curfew. That they were part of like legal counsel and stuff like that. So a lot of people got arrested. And that was on June 4th. I suggest people look into that if they, want to see some more disparities. And as you know, our AG, the Attorney General, is actually filing lawsuit against NYPD, as well as asking for a monitor over the NYPD due to, all the protests and what has happened to citizens just exercising their First Amendment right. I mean, if they're committing crimes, yes, they should be arrested. But if they're not, they should be able to peacefully assemble. So now we can open up discussions if anyone would like to speak, share their thoughts on the insurrection, how they're feeling about it. Just, this is an open discussion. So please feel free to chime in, raise your hand, and we'll call on you.
I see a hand from Rita Popper.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. It was, I always believe every cloud has a silver lining. And even though that was a terrible thing that happened on January 6th, I think that something good is going to come out of it. And the realization that there is not an even hand to justice was most prominent on January 6th. We couldn't, if we had staged it, it couldn't have been more obvious. And what we have to do now is keep at it, because it's out of sight, out of mind. It goes away, you forget about it until the next time. It was something that brought up that justice is not the same for people of color and people who are not of color. And I think that everybody was shocked that it was such a white crowd that stormed the Capitol, because they always think it's just a crowd. It's a crowd of people. It's a little from here, a little from there. It wasn't a little from here and a little from there. It was a lot from right there. So I'm sorry it happened. And in a way, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing of everything that that people of color have been saying and not being believed and not caring about. Now that it has opened another door. That's all I want to say. I'm walking through that door. I hope you are too.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's excellent to just share your thoughts are about it, and that yes, the world is able to actually see the disparities front and center and see the differences, what people are complaining about. Yeah, so that's very important. And like you said, it's something's positive is going to come out of it, definitely. Sadly, too many people died. It wasn't a whole lot, but still, one is more than enough. So, yeah, even an officer, I believe, committed suicide. So, that was really, really bad. And our elected officials there were traumatized. They're still traumatized because they don't know who to trust when it comes to law enforcement as well. So, yeah.
I see we have a hand from Russell Squire.
Okay.
Thanks. So I just wanted to, first of all, the disparity is very stark, I think, just to watch any of the videos from protests over the summer and from the riot at the Capitol. I mean, it's just very obvious. But the point I wanted to make also is, beyond what we saw in the video, I think in the aftermath of the riot, I think the disparity has also been very apparent because there are indications that, despite the fact that there are very, very severe penalties available under the law for activities like this, and there was an executive order about 10-year sentences for assaulting federal property, and there were, we have serious laws on the books relating to terrorism and what have you. There are reports that it seems like to the extent that people are going to be charged, they're going to be charged with unlawful entry or something like that. And what happened there really was not it wasn't a question of trespassing in a park or something like that. I mean, it just wasn't. It was an assault fundamentally on democracy and very much an assault on the government of the United States in the most fundamental way. And there are even now, I think, stories that I've seen suggesting that some of the people who were involved, who have been caught and been arrested, may not be charged at all, for the reason that there are so many of them that prosecutors feel like they're overwhelmed, which is just staggering because across the country, one of the main features of the criminal justice system is enormous amounts of overcrowding. And you have courthouses that are completely overworked and can't keep up with the volume of people who are being prosecuted for nonviolent crimes, and prisons that are vastly overcrowded, and terrible conditions that arise from that. And the idea, that the criminal justice system stops functioning because of overcapacity is a brand new concept that seems to have arisen solely in connection with this particular incident that has not come up before. So it's just another example of the unfairness and the double standard.
Yes, I totally agree. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, we're seeing that. And then there are different jurisdictions too, right? So that's another part of it, that they're acting like they're overworked, and they're not dealing with as much as the frontline law enforcement, regular police officers, the regular courts, the lower courts, I should say. So yeah, we're seeing it front and center. We're hoping that things will change, but we're seeing it. We're seeing how things are done. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just that Russell touched on the discretion that we saw and how it was used to downcharge and to release people and to find kind of the least intrusive way to handle the offenses that day, and that same discretion in how police arrest and how police charge and how prosecutors decide to prosecute wasn't extended. And I thought that Russell's comment about how this mass incarceration machine that we have in the United States was suddenly brand new, and that the backlog in the courts was suddenly a problem in this instant. I see Rita's hand up.
Sure.
And I don't see any other hands up, so We'll go back to Rita for a second try.
Obviously, I have a lot to say.
All right.
But the disparity was even greater. How come, and everything that Russell said was, true, that, there's no room at the inn or whatever it is, but there was room at the end in the inn when the marchers were Black Lives Matter. And there isn't room enough for the mob that descended on the Capitol that had so many dual purposes. I must say, this was Holocaust Remembrance Day this week. And when you see out the Auschwitz camp, or 6 lives weren't enough, 6 million lives weren't enough, there is a difference between the faces, a mob of white faces and a mob of faces of color. And the faces of color were absolutely marching fine until they were put upon. But the white mob, they knew they were going to be a mob. But the point is that what lesson are we teaching them? Nothing. Nothing. We even have uncovered that some of those people are inside the Capitol. What's going to happen to them? I'm telling you, if they were people of color, it would have been different and it would have been wrong. And what it is, I hope that people who are leaders make sure this never happens again. The disparity, it doesn't mean that people can't gather in a peaceful way, but the disparity made it worse. That's it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. You're so right. And with federal, when something's at the federal level, it's actually harsher penalties, harsher sentencing, and so forth. And that just shows they want to show leniency to them, and they just want to. They let one lady go home, and I understand that people can be released on their own recognizance. I understand that if they never committed a crime, but these were federal crimes. These wasn't city and state. These were federal crimes, though. They should, and sadly, they called the president at that time, I believe it was said, and the National Guard was not released when they should have been released. So that was another issue that they probably could have, arrested more of them. So a lot of them did get away, but they're still tracking them down. But yes, are they going to really charge them? And, at what level? Because it should be at the federal level, not local levels, no, it should be at the federal level. Those were federal crimes. And we know, like I said, they have harsher penalties. So we have to wait and see, but it shouldn't be like that, because other people, if it was Black people, yes, they would have been arrested immediately. The National Guard would have been there immediately. I mean, we have to just call it what it is, and it was domestic terrorism. So that's one of the other parts. It was domestic terrorism. We hear this and that about the other terrorists that are not on our soil, but yet and still we have some that are here. And if you watch some of the video, I was looking at it, I was watching how they was climbing the walls. I knew they were military people. We trained these people to actually rise up against the government, at a time that things just didn't fit the way they desired, because, and they wanted to kill people, or, they had zip ties, and I mean, they went in there with weapons. I mean, and they have to be charged, so we have to wait and see, but it's really, it's baffling. It's baffling, not just here for us in this country, around the world is looking at us and looking how this is handled.
See, we have a comment from Wendy.
We did. Just
Wendy, would you still like to speak?
there we go.
Yes, yes. You know, technology this week has just not been our friends. We had Spectrum cable going down repeatedly since last week, and now Mercury's retrograde, so I expect more. So, that was a really interesting piece of footage, and I think most people on this call are too young to remember Gil Scott Heron's poem that was really revolutionary in 1971. The revolution will not be televised. And Google it, and it was really, it's very worthwhile. It will not be presented by Xerox in 4 parts with no commercial interruptions, etc. I mean, I thought it was very much about the curation of news and what we get to see. And I think that the fact that people have cell phones and can broadcast on a lot of social media platforms changes the dialogue somewhat. It's certainly changed the dialogue in the aftermath of George Floyd. That was one of the most powerful things that could have happened. But what's also chilling and not shown in that footage is that in the days before the storming of the Capitol by those terrorists, they were shown around and given the red carpet treatment by their representatives. And that is even more chilling. It is even more chilling than seeing those self-righteous, self-pumped up, I don't know what noun to use, people, I don't know, marching up the Capitol steps, running up the Capitol steps and defiling what is something that belongs to all of us, them and us, but it belongs to all of us. And I also think that some indignation really doesn't sound like a very proper word. It doesn't sound sort of emotional enough, but indignation because, as a New Yorker, I'm aware that we're kind of a funding pump for the rest of the country. At least we have been until this particular COVID crisis has caused a new economy. But still, we pay a larger share of taxes, and we're really paying for those other representatives who let these terrorists have a tour of the Capitol so that they could scope out where they were going to go and kill representatives that they didn't like. And I think that needs to be held in our minds in the forefront as we move forward, because I do believe in peaceful and legal remedy. And I think there are peaceful and legal remedies. And I think that ingredient needs to be put into the mix as well as to the remedy, and that we paid for it. We paid for those officers, we paid for those representatives. We here in New York, we here in all the zip codes that are represented on this call, and for people who are viewing, if you're in New York, we paid for that. And we deserve better, and we should demand better of all our representatives, including those that we didn't actually have to fill out those ovals for, because we're still paying for our government. And thanks for listening.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. Yeah. Also, when we look at how the Capitol was cleaned up, that was actually a crime scene. And I seen them picking up bottles. All of those items should have been tagged, because you would have been able to lift prints and so forth off of them, DNA, and things were just thrown away. It was a crime scene. Someone died. People died. Well, excuse me, people died there. So it was a crime scene, and it was not even handled as that. So that's also problematic when you're really looking deeper into it, So that just shows you how things are done. It evidently wasn't a crime scene to those that handled it, because, like I said, it should have been thousands or hundreds of bags of evidence. Yeah.
I see we have hands from Justine and Rita again as well.
Okay. Justine?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for all of this. I agree with everyone on how obvious the disparities really are. I think there are 2 other points that I couldn't help but think about, which are the level of disparity that exists and has existed for so long, where the people who were committing these crimes felt safe to publicize it and felt that it was like that they're literally pointing out to the authorities what crimes they're committing, and they felt safe to do that. And that's just, obviously historical, and like what they've learned over years and years and years. But I think the other thing that is maybe concerning, and maybe is a direction where people could make some difference moving forward, is how quickly, especially young people, I think, but everyone seems to get over these things that should be groundbreaking, right? We should all be kind of stopped in our tracks with something that's significant. Yet, because of how quickly the world moves now and how accustomed we are to kind of disregard for general politeness or even, other people, that there's not this level of mourning or shared mourning quite the same way. I'm sure among this group there is, but among the public in general. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing and your comments.
If I could ask, so I've really struggled as someone who believes in ending mass incarceration, who believes in bail reform, and that there's value to allowing people who have not been convicted to be free to support their own defense. That in this case, I am struggling with what accountability means, and how do we hold the people who've done this harm accountable, while still at the same time holding these criminal justice reform type of principles. And so I was wondering if folks had thoughts about that. And I see that Rita's hand is up. I don't know if this is something you want to comment on, Rita, or if you had another comment.
Well, actually, I was going to ask if this group feels that we need a resolution to, and I'm not making resolutions normally, but I don't think that we can let this just pass by. This is not a pass. This is, I mean, we have the faces right there. I mean, when you see a march, you don't really see individual faces. We saw those individual faces. We know what they look like. But what we should be asking our elected officials is that we want them to pursue making these people pay for what they did, pay with their time, just the way people of color had to pay in other places. I'm looking for equality. So if we're looking for a resolution, I'd like to make one. If you don't think it's necessary, I'm still going to be here.
Yeah, that sounds good and great. I mean, even just the point of just asking for due process, right? Everyone's entitled to due process. So, but they have to be arrested first.
Right.
So, and we don't even really have that for probably hundreds of them. So, yeah.
Russell had his hand up.
So I wanted to address the point that Sarah raised. So I think in terms of, so from a bail perspective, I think for the most part, if people who are involved in this are released on their own recognizance, I mean, there are some of them who I think can't be because they do pose an imminent sort of danger to people from their involvement with white supremacist organizations and things like that. And I think those, under even a sort of bail reform standard, folks like that wouldn't be released. But I think for the most part, if people are released on their own recognizance before trial, it's fine as long as they are, punished upon being convicted and that they're, charged with appropriately severe crimes. I mean, that's sort of my own 2 cents on it. Whether they're sort of held before trial is less important to me than just the fact that they actually get, that this is treated, in an appropriately serious way in terms of how they're, tried and charged and punished. I guess the other point I was going to make there is, this just sort of goes back to the disparity, but, we've been talking about how differently people were treated in protests over the summer and people who were involved in this riot were treated. And I just also want to point out that, these instances are very different in other ways, in the sense that they're not equivalent events, right? And so, what you had over the summer was people who were overwhelmingly marching in a peaceful way, and to the extent that there were clashes with police, most of those were instigated by the police and by a much more aggressive police response than was necessary. And in many instances, you had people who were just not being violent in any way, and it was only when the police arrived and started trying to do their kettling and moving people around and coming at them that problems arose. And the other thing is, there's a big difference between peacefully protesting. It should go without saying. Even to say it is, it's just so obvious, but peacefully protesting because you're because you don't want your family to be killed because of interactions with police officers, and for just equal treatment, compared to people whose demand literally was the overturning of a democratic election. The nature of what it was that was being demanded, how it was being done. The whole intent of what was going on, right? Black Lives Matter protests, we are protesting to call for change, in the law, change in policies, as opposed to essentially the stated aim of this riot was, we are going to violently force Congress to recognize a different winner of a democratic election. There's just not there. Those two things aren't even in the same universe. So, look, all of that is just to reiterate the points that I think we're all focused on. And I guess the last thing I'll say, and sorry that I'm going on here, but I think accountability should be broader than the people who participated directly. This was the culmination of months of essentially incitement, and it was willful incitement. It was incitement by people who knew that they were lying. It was incitement intended to stir people up in a very violent and angry way. And I think the people who were involved to that extent also, I think I'm hopeful that there will be some accountability for them also.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Russell. You're so right. As an organizer with UES for BLM, as some of you all know, I was a key speaker a while back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I was a little low. Sorry. I'm working on my phone. I apologize. Internet. So as you know, I'm a organizer with UES for BLM. And at one time I was a key speaker, and I recall doing a talk about having the talk with your child. As a Black mother of 2 sons, I had to speak to my kids for many years, well over a decade, of how to handle police interactions, which, my other people, other races do not have to do that. When you think of disparities, it's really harsh for people of color just to even interact with the police. My oldest son at the time wanted to be a police officer when he was young, always talked to the police, and now it's like no interest, after you see, the things that go on and the disparities and how people are treated in the same crimes. We see that not just with this insurrection, with similar crimes in the system in New York and different states. We see people of color behind bars, and we see Caucasian people or other people that are not Black released or receive probation for the same crime. So how do we tackle this? How do we get equality throughout these United States here in New York and beyond for everyone to, if you commit a crime and, how they are treated. Even if you look at the crack epidemic to the opiate epidemic, it's handled different. They're not prosecuted with opiate. They're given help, so the disparities are long. They go back decades, and we're actually seeing now, front and center what's going on, and it's really it's problematic. It's problematic for us, us that care about everyone, not just a certain group of people. Yeah. I'm working on my phone. Anybody else? Any more comments? This is an open discussion regarding disparities and the insurrection at the Capitol.
I'm not seeing any other hands at the moment.
No. Okay.
If we don't,
Sorry.
I see
Sorry
Billy.
to interject, Sarah. I just saw Billy.
I thought he would raise his hand eventually. Okay.
My reputation. I just got out of a meeting and I was hesitant to speak because I listened to everything that preceded and I don't want to repeat too much. But to the extent I'm echoing anything that's been said, I mean, okay, so obviously we've got Black Lives Matter protesters getting kettled and locked up and treated horribly, and we let white supremacists waltz into the Capitol. I think that's probably all been covered. I don't know how much discussion there was of bail and not, and I know Russell talked about it, so this is kind of where I wanted to jump in and say, the original purpose of bail was to make sure people return to court. It's about people who are a flight risk. It's not about how terrible the crime that you're accused of is. And I think it's hard to say this because what we saw the other day was a horrifying desecration of everything this country stands for, what we saw on January 6th. But, I am a criminal justice reformer. I want to reduce the use of bail and pretrial incarceration because I think it destroys lives, and we need to look no further than the Khalif Browder story for that. So my general position on this is, people should be released while they are awaiting their trial. And I don't know if that's where this discussion is entering, but I don't want us to, lose sight of that principle, which I believe is a social justice principle of how do we decarcerate this country, particularly around practices that have for so long been used predominantly against the Black and brown communities. So I don't want to lose sight of that piece of it. But, I will just close by saying the 6th reminded us of the way in which white supremacy has infected so much of our society. It's not just going back to 1776, it's going back to 1619. It's, read the 1619 Project, learn about our history. And I believe it is, people say, it's unpatriotic to criticize the country's history and how racist we were and all that's in the past. Well, two things. One, it's not all in the past because we still deal with systemic racism today. We still deal with the effects of redlining today. We gave white people the greatest home ownership opportunity, the greatest wealth generating opportunity in American history in home ownership while we redlined communities. But I would also say it is patriotic to criticize and question our country and our past practices and how we can be better. It is unpatriotic. It is not to love your country to refuse to criticize and make her better. So let's learn from our history. Let's continue to tackle white supremacy. And yeah, we're a community board, but we can do that every day. We can do that by recognizing our own implicit biases. We can do that by recognizing the ways in which we are not as representative as we could be. We can do that by recognizing the ways in which policies we've supported, sometimes by resolutions, perpetuate segregation and incarceration, frankly, at some points. Look, I'll leave it there. I get a little bit of a box to use Rita's word about this, but that's my piece, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. Thank you, Billy. Yeah, you raised some very valid points. Yes. Yeah. I'm wondering with federal crimes, I'm sure the books are not the same with bail and how they're released compared to city and state. Like, even in New York City, um, that's why people usually, if they know they're guilty, they call it cop a plea, right? You cop at the lower level if you know you're guilty. If you think you don't want to, they call it blow. You don't want to blow trial, right? So you cop at the lower level, so you're not going to receive as harsh of a sentence if you take it to the next level. So I'm sure with the federal crimes, the penalties are stiffer. But yeah, and I'm not sure. I would have to really look into it, and maybe you can, Billy, too. With the federal crimes, should some of them have been released on bail? You know, yeah, but they were. So
So Billy touched on something that Rita originally raised, which was developing a resolution. And Rita, do you want to speak to what you were thinking about as content for the resolution? And then we can discuss whether or how to formulate content and all that kind of stuff.
What I really see is that we need our elected officials to write to the elected official. It should go beyond the elected officials in New York State, but to the federal government, that actually we want some retaliation in the same way that people of color, when they protested against when they peacefully protested and were agitated by the police, here these people were agitated, start coming in. So I don't really know. I'm going to be somebody who's better at this than I am, but I think that we want people to know that we don't like what we have seen. We don't think it was even. We don't think it was equal. And we want to know why. That's just a start. I'm open to any and all means. It's the inequality that we want to point out. That is key. And if we don't, we'll just keep having inequality.
right, that's true. That's true. I wouldn't use retaliation, more of accountability. We want accountability. Yeah, I wouldn't use retaliation though. But yeah,
I have only a few words in my vocabulary.
No, that's you said accountability before, I believe. So yeah.
People have to be accountable. They
Yeah.
have to be accountable. And even though it was mob rule, it was the same mob rule in Charlotte.
Yes.
It was the same mob rule, wherever it is, there's mob rule. There's always a mob that's against it, that causes something. It's never one person. It's mob rule and it's mob thinking. But this one hit a lot of people. This one hit all of us because it's our government. But what about even for the two people who have been identified who are members of the House of Representatives who helped them?
Right.
And they're going to have a little hearing, and then it will be the vote, and the vote it can't be a vote to keep them. Where is our say that this doesn't stand? If we let it go, so what do we wait till the next time?
Right.
I mean, I'm very old and I don't have the next time. I'm serious. I want to see change while we here and now. I'm glad I'm not passionate tonight. I'm generally on Thursdays, I'm much more calmer than on Fridays. But
Yes, thank you for that. Yes.
I do see we have one other hand up, actually, if you'd like.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't see the hand. Oh, it's Shasha.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I'm a 214 Tennis Association. Live on Roosevelt Island. You have to understand, hate is embedded. And the people that did these crimes this hate has embedded. You have to understand, they really do not care about if they get arrested. This is hate. You have to understand, you have to treat this in a way where we have to go beyond. We really have to get embedded into them, and we really have to really not just hold them accountable. We can't let them just walk out, because what they will do, they will turn and get worse. Okay, it's the same with the civil rights. Even though we got spit on or whatever happened, they came back and they killed us. They actually killed. They do not care. We have to come to some type of another solution. Okay, you don't understand. Hate is different from discrimination. Okay, it's embedded, it's taught. This is taught. Okay, it's a big difference. Discrimination does not have anything to do with hate. Okay, this is embedded in your heart. A person that hates you will shoot you and go to jail. And when you ask them why they do it, they will say, "'Cause I felt like it." And that's how they did at our White House. There's a big difference. This is something called critical thinking. You have to think another way.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. It's powerful. Yeah. This is an open discussion, so yeah.
Oh, I see another hand, actually. Jill. There you go.
Hi, thank you for opening up this meeting. I just want to add that we shouldn't ignore the fact that what this hateful, and I appreciate those last words that were said, because I'm tired of this group being referred to as the MAGA, as if they're some political group that is entitled to a title anything other than white supremacists, even Nazis, given what they were doing, bringing Confederate flags into the Capitol. You need to call a spade a spade. And I think the important piece also to recognize in terms of the race piece of this group of people was trying to overturn the election because they were unhappy that Black voters in this country had a big part of the outcome of this election. This is very much about voter suppression and the history of that in this country, which ties into that hate, which ties into everything that's been said tonight. And here we are sitting in New York City. I happen to have spent the last 6 months working on voter protection, both in the national and Georgia race. So it's very near and dear to me. But I just think we need to keep our eyes open, even though we're here in New York City, to that extraordinarily important issue. Our democracy is being threatened. I mean, I just heard someone, a former FBI agent, saying this week on a Zoom I was on, that he has heard firsthand that many of the senators who are saying they are not going to vote to convict will not do so because they feel threatened for their lives and their families' lives. So I just share that because I think this hate that was just referenced is even at just a level that our elected officials feel threatened. to do the right thing. And I don't really know exactly what the answer is for us, sitting on this call, but this is a serious, serious situation in my estimation.
Thank you. Thank you for that. You're so right.
I'm trying to draft some language and I'll put it in the chat soon. And Max, if you could share it, and then maybe we can discuss if it's sufficient or if there's anything else that we want to include in a resolved.
I'm not sure if others are aware, newly elected Cori Bush actually had to move her office. Nancy Pelosi actually moved her office. I can't think of the lady's name, but her and some people, they were trying to intimidate her. So, yeah, when we speak about hate, I'm trying to guard my words, especially as a co-chair, but yeah, it's deeper than what we just seen, so she doesn't feel safe, and they're trying to intimidate her and threatening her in the Capitol. This is happening, so it's still going on in different ways. There's another newly elected, I don't know if it's the same lady, but she wanted to come in with her gun, and some of them want to come in with their guns, and that's a no now, but it also boils down to privilege, right? White privilege, and power, political power, and who's in power. And it's good to see more people of color and Blacks, running for these seats and running for this office to balance our legislation, balance our governing, and so hopefully we can see better. I know a lot of people felt, Obama, especially some people of color, felt he should have done more. I disagree. I just think, he was a president for all. I know he was a president for all people, right? Just because he was a Black president, he was a president for all people. But Black people and people of color expected more out of him, sadly. But now we have Biden in office, and we have Kamala, and we'll see. But we also have the push from the people, right? The people that want to get into good trouble, right? That want to be on the right side of history and demand equality and to knock down all of these disparities. That's what we're trying to see. That's why many of us are still out marching, out protesting, leading movements, because enough is enough, and we've seen it. We've seen too much. And the 8 minutes and 46 seconds, when you go back to George Floyd, it didn't just awake America, it awoke in the globe awoke on this, and it didn't, and we should have been at that level with Eric Gardner, what we seen with Eric Gardner some years ago, but it just didn't take place, but who else has to die? And more people have died, but who else have to die that we'll have more people being involved in caring, or so yeah.
Rita has her head up once. Her hand up once more.
Okay, Rita.
Oh, sorry, I may have accidentally muted you there. There you go.
I feel like I've been let out of prison and I didn't talk to somebody for a long time, but that's not the case. I really think that the woman Jill just said many things that are very pertinent, and I personally do not see that you can have discrimination without hate, or that you can have hate without discrimination. I often think that if I was in Germany during World War II, that all 5 feet of me, would have, done something. But let's not forget that Hitler was elected, and for no other reason that the hate for Jewish people then discriminated against them close their businesses. I mean, everything happened. That, if we don't stop it, it's gonna happen here. And that's what I'm afraid of. I think that Trump, in many respects, symbolized what Hitler had stood for to the German people. Hitler was elected. Trump was elected. And 7 million people, 70 million people were willing to re-elect him. So this is an insidious thing. And I still think that we have to let people know that we're watching them, that we're not going to take this anymore. I promise that's my last.
Wow. So it's in the chat now?
Yes,
for us
that's
all
right.
to review?
I just
Yeah.
placed it. Sarah sent it over.
Thank you, Sarah. You all everyone could look at the chat and review the resolution that we're gonna hopefully put forth.
I try to include the language that that people used during our meeting, and so I'm ready to edit as people have suggestions.
Great. I know people are probably viewing it. Is it possible you could read it as well, Sarah? Or no? I don't know.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. Okay. We perceive the actions of January 6th as a violent assault on our democracy, an expression of white supremacy, and that should say an exhibition of hatred for the diversity that we value in our community. We call on our elected officials to thoroughly investigate the genesis of the events of January 6th, identify those responsible, and hold them accountable. I just realized there's nothing about disparities in here. So please edit. A just and thorough resolution of this threat on our democracy is necessary for the protection of our right to vote, our collective safety, and our community's desire to advance an anti-racist future for our country.
Go ahead, Rita.
The only thing is that I think it's a good resolution, but I'd like to change one thing, if you don't mind, is that we know what the genesis of this was. The president told them to storm the Capitol, and that's just what they did. And we know the genesis of Proud Boys, and we know the genesis of of Aryan, of only Aryans count. So I don't think we need to investigate the genesis. What we need to do is to investigate the diverse treatment of these people who, so these people, the mob that stormed the Capitol, that they be treated the same way that people died. Who is going to be responsible for killing those people in the Capitol? I mean, not only it was done with a shot. They stomped on a police officer who was a person of color, who was a Black man, stomped on him and kicked him and everything else. So I'm not, I would like to see it stronger. We know the genesis. That we want to see somebody brought to justice who really caused this harm. People who went in with it, that's mob rule. But not everybody stomped on a police officer, but those who, and we have pictures of those who stomped, and those people should be held accountable. That's my opinion.
Yeah, thank you, Rita. Billy added something in the chat, I see.
And I've just unmuted him as well.
Go ahead, Billy.
Well, I was just thinking, some of this is just a little bit of language, like instead of saying the actions of the January 6th, call it, the January 6th insurrection on the Capitol. But I also think, after we say hold them accountable, I would say maybe comma, this includes, or we could say including, the ex-president and elected members of Congress who supported baseless conspiracy theories that the election was fraudulent. And then at the very end, I just thought we could add, I know I have some typos here, sorry. The events of January 6th are a reminder for all of us to redouble our efforts to combat structural racism and white supremacy and to dismantle the institutions, local and national, that perpetuate hate and discrimination.
That's a great be it therefore result. Or
right. Yeah, something like that.
Okay. I'm trying to integrate both Billy's and Wendy's language here. And Wendy wanted to make sure that we perceive the terrorist actions of January 6th as a violent assault.
Just so you know, you have Russell Squires up as well.
Oh. Domestic terrorists. I think we.
Russell?
Sure. Thank you. So I have a couple of sort of smaller suggestions and then a kind of larger comment. I would say for the first part about, I think it's better to say we condemn the actions of January 6th and probably refer to the actions more strongly as Billy had suggested. But I would say I think we condemn the actions, not merely that we perceive them a certain way, but we condemn them. The other thing is I would suggest being a little broader in the sort of accountability that we're asking for. I mean, I think in a way there's sort of three components of it. I think there's, we want elected officials to act, we want law enforcement to act, and I think, we could also call on society to do it, because I think there's an element here of elected officials taking action against those within their ranks who played a part in this. I think there's obviously the law enforcement element of, the people who were actually there at the Capitol being appropriately dealt with. And I also think there is this, broader aspect of it in society to say that basically anyone who had any part in the sort of lying and whatever that led to this, and lying about the outcome of the election and humoring the efforts to sort of call the election into question or whatever, that wasn't just a partisan disagreement. That was really, really wrong. And I think that there is a sort of growing recognition that, it shouldn't be treated as a situation where people agree to disagree, and people who participated in that kind of thing shouldn't just be sort of welcomed back into polite society. They were, as we've said, they were trying to overthrow the very concept of democracy in America, essentially. So I think that that's part of it. The other thing is, and then I think you want to, my broader comment, and this one, you guys can take it or leave it. To me, less is more in a way. I think that trying to be too specific, may not be necessary. I think to sort of use broad language about just what, that we're condemning what happened as, the terrorist awful thing it was, that we're condemning the disparity, the obvious sort of disparity in the treatment, and that we're calling for accountability. And I think, and obviously, it'll be it should be more specific than that, but my suggestion really particularly from the perspective of just avoiding kind of, when this gets to the board, and if there's going to be sort of nitpicking about specific language, and do we really want to use this word, and can we really use that word, and what does this mean, and so on and so forth. I think if you use sort of broader language and are not as specific in some of the points, I think that's still going to get the message across and actually kind of fully encompass what we're getting at without getting into discussions that I think are just sort of further afield from what we're talking about specifically in terms of what happened at the Capitol and the kinds of things that we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Russell.
And we do have to read it again.
Been on the board for 12 years. I've never said it so many things. Do you think that we should mention ex-President Trump as the inciter of this mob riot, and then he and people in Congress who went along with him and for this election, because he didn't like the outcome, that we are agreeing with them, since there is this trial coming, that we support that people can't, I guess the analogy, you can't yell fire in a movie theater when there's no fire. It's not free speech. It's not number one. I don't know whether you wanted to condemn the instigator of this resurrection. Just a question.
I don't know if this is enough. In terms of addressing everyone's comments. So I just, oops. Okay, the last bit got cut off. Sorry about that, Max. So I put the therefore be it resolved in a second bubble for you.
I see.
Okay. All right, so I'll try to read it while Max is getting this on the chat. Resolved, we condemn the terrorist actions of January 6th on our capital as a violent insurrection, a terrorist assault on our democracy, an expression of white supremacy, the exhibition of hatred for the diversity that we value in our community, and condemn the disparate treatment of Black Lives Matters protesters, and it should say something like compared to the insurrectionists, but I didn't get that right. We call on our elected officials to thoroughly investigate, I guess it shouldn't say the genesis, to thoroughly investigate those responsible for the events of January 6th, hold them accountable, including, and here's where I was less specific, and I don't know if this is the less specific, or to shorten things and to not have things in this that would cause heartburn at the larger board. Hold them accountable. Those elected officials, instead of naming the ex-president, those elected officials who incited the insurrection and supported baseless conspiracy theories that the election was fraudulent. A just and thorough resolution of this threat on our democracy is necessary for the protection of our right to vote, our collective safety, and our community's desire to advance an anti-racist future for our country. The events of January 6th are a reminder for us all to redouble our efforts to combat structural racism and white supremacy. And we call, just say call, on our community to work together to dismantle the institutions, local and national, that perpetuate hate and discrimination. Like, there's still so much to correct in there.
Sarah,
Yes?
do you have this open on a Google Doc on your screen that you could share and everybody could look at?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great idea, Will. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's
Give me 1 second to give you the ability. There you go.
super.
A little easier to follow along for everybody, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. That is a great idea. And then I can make all the corrections live.
Here, maybe I need to allow you to share screen. You should be good now.
Okay, thank you. Oops. All right, so I'm trying to share my screen. Okay, I'm gonna shut my video off so my computer can handle all this information. Okay, does everybody see the document?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, I also just noticed that Russell has his hand up. Can I go to Russell real quick?
Yes, oh, sorry. Yes, please.
That's right. Thanks. So I guess, I mean, maybe this is obvious, but I think you're going to want to break it into multiple resolved clauses. Right. So like, I think, the first one would be we condemn, et cetera. Yeah. Then you've got we call on. I think. Yeah, I would say, so for the second part, we're calling on elected officials. I think here's a suggestion for sort of simplified language, and you can see what you think of this, but I would say we call on our elected officials to hold Donald Trump and any other elected officials who incited the events at the Capitol accountable for that. And I think you can, and maybe we include the references to, or yeah, who incited the events by supporting baseless conspiracy theories that the election was fraudulent, and hold them accountable. And I think you don't have to be more specific than that. I mean, I think holding them accountable encompasses the investigations that you have to do as part of that, and encompasses all of that stuff. I think the main point is that you want to get to a point of accountability. And then I would suggest maybe two other resolve clauses, which would be one to say we call on law enforcement officials to hold those who participated and incited, what happened, how we're going to describe it, accountable to the fullest extent of the law. We call upon, and then I would say maybe to say we call upon society at large to do its part to hold the people who participated in this accountable. Something, I mean, that's getting to the other point that I made. And then the last thing I would say is I think and actually I would say I would even split, sorry, in the first paragraph. I would suggest taking the last part, the and part, the disrepair treatment. I would make that a separate resolve clause. No, sorry. That I think goes with the first part. I mean, the discussion of the disparate treatment.
Oops. Yep, sorry. Here.
To me, that's a separate point. And then and it'll be something like, yeah, we condemn. And then I think if you go down to the very end, my only hesitation here really is the reference to dismantling institutions. And I agree with that. I just don't think it's part of the, I mean, I would say it's not something that we really discussed very much tonight. I think it sort of brings in larger issues that, are important and that I think we're going to want to kind of tackle, but it just, to me, it's not, it's not, I think it's raising questions of what we're referring to specifically, which we haven't really discussed. And I think that's going to kind of potentially take things sort of off. It's just, I think it's kind of unnecessarily tangential.
Think about structural forces.
Yeah, I think if you want to say something like combat the structural forces that perpetuate hate and discrimination, I think that sounds good to me. And these are all, look, these are suggested friendly amendments, and I don't mean to try and do it, but I think that's, yeah, I just think it fits more with the rest of what we're saying.
Okay, so we call on for all those who participated and incited. Insurrection. We call on society at large to hold does anyone have suggestions for this resolve?
Ensure accountability for, those who participated, et cetera.
Just put down here in case we ever need that language for another time. Okay. I can't see if anyone's got their, oh, we've got Brian with his hand up.
Sure, I'll go to Brian.
Sorry, I'm having trouble because I'm trying to view it on my phone. So that last section, Sarah, that Russell was just saying. So can you just read it out loud because I'm having trouble zooming on my phone?
Yeah. So if I'm reading the right section, it's therefore be it resolved, the events of January 6th are a reminder for all of us to redouble our efforts to combat structural racism and white supremacy and call on our community to work together to combat the structural forces that perpetuate hate and discrimination.
How about the paragraph before that?
Resolved, we call upon society to ensure accountability for those who participated in the insurrection.
And I feel like if we're talking about society, we also have to call on society to address, help address and stop, the disinformation attempts, because I think the results of what happened on January 6th had to do a lot with this whole disinformation campaign, that the election was stolen, that people voted illegally. I mean, we're not talking about all the stuff that the disinformation that led up to that happening. So I don't know I'm not a wordsmith. I don't know how to say that other than asking society at large to just acknowledge places or areas of disinformation, and to do its part, everybody in society to do their part to stop disinformation, so that people can believe one truth and and believe in one set of facts, that something so simple as an election.
And Russell has his hand up again as well, so I'm going to unmute him.
What do you think about we call upon society to ensure accountability for those who participated in the insurrection and for those who contributed to the misinformation campaigns that led to the insurrection? Is that, I mean, maybe that's too, I don't know if that maybe that's narrower than to say that we're addressing it, but I don't know if that.
Does that sound good to you? So it would say, I'll read it for you all together. Resolved, we call upon society to ensure accountability for those who participated in the insurrection and for those who contributed to the misinformation campaigns that led to the insurrection.
I actually think, well, why don't we say, I'm sorry, why don't we say, and to address the misinformation I think that that language that Brian had was actually better. So, and to address, the misinformation campaign.
Yeah. Okay. So, accountability for those who participated in the insurrection and to address the misinformation campaigns that led to the insurrection. Let's see, does anyone else have comments? What do you think, Sandrea?
It sounds good. I'm working off my phone too, so but I didn't even try to power my laptop back up, but it's coming together. It's coming together. Sounds good.
Do you think the second resolved, I feel like I'm not doing it justice. Resolved, we condemn the disparate treatment of Black Lives Matter's protesters and the insurrectionists. It's not right. I need something else there. Grammatically, I think I don't have it. So
Even if you don't even use Black Lives Matter protests, just peaceful protesters, right? We don't even have to label them as BLM, just peaceful protesters. So that's applicable to all people. I mean, because we even seen with the union at Hunts Point, they were arresting the strikers, NYPD. So, and they were peaceful. So fighting for $1 raise.
Is it disparate treatment between peaceful protesters and the insurrectionists?
I would just, I'm sorry, can you hear me again, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, no, I was just thinking maybe we continue to condemn this desperate treatment between peaceful and non-peaceful protesters. I mean, the January 6th event was, about the insurrectionists, but, I think we just have to continuously condemn, the difference between what a peaceful protest is versus a non-peaceful.
I really like that. Do I have this preposition right? This retreat treatment between peaceful and non-peaceful?
I think it's treatment of.
Treatment of. Thank you.
But well, I don't know. Look, my view on this is that you're running into potentially I think even to say that, you know, the people on January 6th were non-peaceful protesters, I feel like is almost giving them too much credit.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand the idea is to make it a broader point, but that's my concern.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, in a way, you know, the problem I think when you're dealing with protesters is that there isn't disparate treatment between peaceful and you know, non-peaceful people at a protest, that everybody's sort of treated as if they're not being peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at even with the armed, with the long guns, you know, how they're treated, you know, just standing with long guns. So
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying, Russell, just about, you know, I mean, insurrectionist is definitely the appropriate term for January 6th, but, you know, maybe, you know, peaceful protesters and rioters, or just something that's a little bit more extreme than, you know, just saying, you know, non-peaceful.
I see Wendy has her hand up.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Hi, guys. Instead of non-peaceful protesters, you could say white supremacists. You could say violent capital terrorists, and capital is with an OL.
Oops. Thank you.
No, spell check just weird stuff. It just autocorrects willy-nilly. So there you go.
My grammatical prowess for all the world to see.
If you're saying elected officials, it's redundant to say Donald Trump. He was an elected official. This is my 2 cents if I were reading it over.
It's true.
And I understand, Russell, the point you're making about calling upon society, because we're saying that every one of us has a responsibility. But let's call upon every citizen instead of societies. I don't know. I had a legal writing professor who just would jump down our throats when we would use that word. So I have a knee-jerk reaction. But we call upon every citizen and legislator to ensure accountability.
All Americans.
Sure. Absolutely.
I think we need to do a different term other than all Americans, because if you say all Americans, you're only talking about American citizens,
right?
Or all those, you know.
I'm sorry to do lawyer head. If we were going to sue somebody about this, we can't sue a nebulous entity. Who would we be suing? So maybe that would help. I can sue a legislator. I definitely.
Well, these are the plaintiffs now. We're talking about with society.
Well,
all people could be used in society. So all people instead of Americans, because we do have people that are visiting, working here.
Okay.
For that second resolved, I replaced non-peaceful protesters with white supremacist terrorists.
And other hate groups.
And other hate groups. Oh, that's good.
Can it be turned down?
Scroll down. Yeah.
No.
Oh.
No. Up the background.
Okay.
can I also say that in the third, we call on our elected officials to hold elected officials. How about well, no, don't take that away yet. We call on our elected officials and judicial system.
Ah.
Similarly, we call law enforcement officials and the judicial system again on the paragraph below that. Yeah.
For this result, we call on our elected officials and judicial system to hold elected officials who incited the events by supporting baseless conspiracy theories that the election was fraudulent accountable, or should we say to hold accountable the elected officials?
Yeah. I think you have to be more specific than events too. I think you have to say whatever our shorthand is for it. Riot at the Capitol, whatever you want to say, or I don't know.
January 6th attack.
Okay, is this the beginning? Yeah. Okay. So this is the top. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I made a mistake here.
I think therefore be it resolved is going to go at in the first one.
Okay, and then the last one is be it further resolved.
I think they're all further resolved in the middle.
Okay, all further resolved. Great.
And in that fourth bullet that you're in now, I think you want to say we call on law enforcement officials and the judicial system, or I guess probably the judicial system.
Is the DOJ involved in this? Department of Justice?
I would consider them to be part of law enforcement officials.
Okay. No, when you were saying law, okay. Okay.
I think so. They're prosecuting, right? I guess. Yeah. All right. Does anyone else have any other edits? Oh, I see Wendy. Wendy's hand is up again.
Oh, I don't know why it's up again, but I still have a live mic, but thank you.
Okay.
I'm really impressed that this came together so quick.
I know, you guys are magnificent writers. Are we ready to Russell, what happens now? Does someone have to move?
Yep, someone can move it. And Rita does have her hand up. I don't know if that's what she's doing, but someone has to move it. And then, I mean, it was originally her resolution. Someone has to move it and then second it and we can vote on it.
Make a motion to accept the motion is written. The resolution is written.
Second.
All in favor? Now, how do you want to do this?
Yes. Do we do roll call, Max?
Yes, I just have to read everyone that is here. So I'm going to do that now then.
Okay. So for those of us who are joining us for the first time, the roll call is for the community board members, and so please don't feel left out if your name aren't called, but we will definitely acknowledge the incredible work of all the participants in our community in building this resolution.
Yes.
Okay, so we have Rita, Russell, Sandrea, Billy, Sarah, Brian, and I think that's it.
Great. Yes?
Yes, confirming that is it, yes. I was waiting for someone that I missed to maybe raise their hand, but no one did, so that is it.
Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that right?
Yes, 6.
6 to 0 to 0. Great. Wow, go team.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you all for your contributions to this. Wow. And you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, this is a powerful resolution. Thank you, everybody, for making this possible.
Yeah. Being instrumental in crafting it. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
No other hands, right?
No, I don't see any other hands.
Okay. So we can move on to new business. Or am I? Yes, no?
Sure.
Okay. So new business is the Social Justice Committee will be meeting on the 4th Monday of every month. So that's one thing we want to bring forth for you all. Anything you want to add?
I was just going to acknowledge, the Youth Education and Libraries Committee was very gracious in swapping. So I want to acknowledge them for doing that.
Yes, yes. And when are they're moving to what, Thursday or?
I think they're the 4th Thursdays.
Right, okay, yeah. That's good. So we're thankful for that. And your leadership, Russell, our chair, and everyone else. Thank you. I don't think we have any other new business. Right, Sarah? I don't think so.
Yeah, unless folks have recommendations on items that we can put on our list. We do have, I guess under new business, we can talk about what we have coming up on our docket.
Well, yeah, I guess we would have to, this resolution will have to be passed before the full board, or?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not sure if this is pertaining to that, but Patrick Boblin has his hand up.
Oh.
Hey all, yeah, great.
Muted.
Patrick, you're muted.
Oh,
sorry, try again. There we go.
Are we unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Just had a quick question. I jumped in a little late. Great job with the resolution, everybody. So I've started a new little group called UES Mutual Aid Network. And one of the things we're doing is hopefully opening up a community fridge over at 91st and 3rd. And I don't know if it would be a conversation with social justice or for street life, but it would be something where I'd love to have some community support for that. We're still figuring out the details of it, but I would like to know that there was some community support as well. So I just wanted to get that ball rolling and introduce that idea to everyone tonight.
You can email me about that if you like.
Great.
Yeah, in case you don't know, I just wanted to clarify, a community fridge would be just food, like a fridge that's maintained by some community members that gives food to just people who walk by who need it. And we will get some contributions from a local restaurant, Kaya, a wine bar on 90th and 3rd. And we would be working in tandem with some local food kitchens and a group called the Fridge Girls as well.
I see Billy.
Would it be appropriate then to do any sort of resolution supporting UES mutual aid? Do we want to take this at another meeting and hear more from them about the work they're doing? I just wonder, what concrete ways we can be supportive. I do think making the community aware of volunteer, but also donation opportunities is important. But what do we think we can or should do tonight or in a future meeting?
Know more about it.
Yeah. Russell, in terms of jurisdiction, and Patrick, I hate to put you off to more bureaucracy, but is this a social services?
I don't know. I would say, email me information about it and I'll route it to the right committee, the fridge. And I would say for the other issue that Billy just raised, I think if you want to do anything substantive on it, I think you're going to want to have had it on the agenda so that people can come and know that it's going to be discussed and everything. So I would just suggest not dealing with it tonight.
Thank you.
That's what I had raised my hand for.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any further hands.
Okay.
Just kidding. I see Rita.
Rita.
Am I unmuted or?
Yes.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Motion to adjourn. It was an excellent meeting.
I see Billy and Russell.
Great.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Wonderful.
Thank you for participating. We had no old business anyway, so we good. Thank you. Thank you, Rita. Thank you all. Thank you, Russell.
Have a
Thank
great
you for
weekend.
crafting the resolution. Yes. See y'all next month.